Welcome back to the channel. We're almost there, getting through all the divisions in the NFL, predicting what they're going to look like, who's going to win the divisions, what do the key players look like, all that good stuff. We've done almost all of them so far, so check them out if you haven't seen any of them that you're interested in. But today's division is the NFC South. So that means we're talking about the Falcons, the Saints, the Panthers, and the Buccaneers. And on paper, I think a lot of people like me are going to see this division as one of the weaker ones in the NFL this season, but that's not to say we can't see one team in particular, I think, potentially go quite far. But enough of that, let's just get straight into the predictions. So here we go. To be honest, before I did this division and thought about the teams and the players within these teams, I had a very different mindset as to who I thought was going to win. And the team that I've got finishing last in the Panthers, I honestly at one stage had them winning this division. A lot sort of changed for me though in terms of this offense. Bryce Young, obviously the number one pick, quarterback. He could be anything in the future, but I don't necessarily see it being lights out in year one. And a lot of that is predicated on the offensive line. This offensive line is seriously not looking good. Based off preseason, again, make of it what you will in terms of how much you take into preseason for various teams, but the offensive line needs to be able to protect someone the size of Bryce Young. He's not the most mobile quarterback. He can move, but I think this is a big talking point for the success of the Panthers this season, and ultimately, in my prediction, the lack of success. I also have my reservations for Frank Reich, their head coach. Obviously, did not work out at all at the Colts. Before that, he was obviously with the Philadelphia Eagles, and that worked out really nicely because ultimately he was part of that Super Bowl success a few seasons ago now. But as a head coach, I don't really think it's going to work out again for Frank Reich here in Carolina. And I go back to the point that I made, mentioning that I had this team winning the division. This is probably a couple months ago. Like, this is early predictions. But based on the defense could really stand out. I think this season. I sort of moved away from that given the lack of strength from this offense, I think. We've talked about the offensive line and even just the receivers. You know, headlined by Adam Thielen, one of the oldest receivers in the league, still got some quality, but it's not convincing at all in my eyes. And jumping back to the defense, the players like Brian Burns and JC Horn, I think they headline this defense, obviously one being on the line, the other a cornerback. They can really solidify this defense as one of the best in the league. But ultimately, I just think this whole team will not be good enough to sort of progress through this NFC, even though it's a weak division, and the NFC compared to the AFC, as I've said plenty of times, is a lot weaker. I just don't see the Panthers having a good season, and I see it being a bit of a struggle for the number one overall pick. And so where do I have their record? I think it'll be a very tight division, just like it was last season. I have them sitting at 7 wins. And so, you know, it could really go either way with a lot of these teams. I think this is probably one of the tightest divisions in the NFL. Also happens to be one of the worst, I think, right now. So it's a weird one, and I really could accept any sort of prediction, I reckon. But let me know what you think. Where do you have the Panthers going into this season? In third, I have the Buccaneers, and on first glance, you probably see me having the Panthers in fourth as a big surprise because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are just sitting there, in everyone's case, just about as the worst team in this division for sure. But I don't think it's going to play out that way. I don't think they're going to be light years better than the Panthers. I think they'll just be able to grab a couple more, maybe division wins, and just the experience of their elite, elder statesman type players, I guess, to bring this team sort of through the ups and downs of the NFL season. And so that veteran presence along with Todd Bowles, I think, as a head coach, I just pretty much would rather him over Frank Reich to sort of steady that ship. No pun intended, being the Buccaneers, but yeah, moving on. But I just think they have a lot of elite talent still. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin are still some of the best receivers going around. In terms of a duo, it's still one of the best. Obviously, we have to talk about the quarterback situation. Baker Mayfield coming in for Tom Brady. Tom Brady is now not playing NFL for the first time in forever, which is weird to say. But Baker Mayfield is there, and he's taking the reins as the quarterback. And a lot of people have their reservations, and fair enough. I don't rate Baker Mayfield very highly, but I think he'll be capable enough to produce something, in spots throughout this season. Because, you sort of saw it when he went to the Rams for that end patch when Stafford was out. He actually got, a few big plays, couple wins under his belt there. So he's a capable quarterback. It's not the most exciting player in the world, but I think he's more than capable of getting this Tampa Bay Buccaneers a few wins. And then you've got a couple of younger, recently drafted players. On the defense particularly, Kalijah Kancey is a small defensive sort of nose tackle type player. Very similar to Aaron Donald in terms of the size profile. What he can produce on the field, we're yet to see at an NFL level, but I think it's a very interesting prospect there. And then Yaya Diaby, another one on the defensive line. Very intriguing prospects in terms of the young talent coming out of Tampa Bay. The final player that I want to talk about for this Buccaneers team is Rachaad White. I've spoken about him before, being the player to watch on this Buccaneers team because he's got that backfield basically to himself. Leonard Fournette, gone. He still doesn't have a team at the moment. He's probably just waiting in the wings for a nice situation to pop up. But Rachaad White, it's his backfield. They've got Chase Edmonds backing him up. Keyshawn Vaughn, but these names aren't very exciting. And Rachaad White, going into his second season, could have a massive season because Todd Bowles will want to sort of grind out games with the run game. Obviously, Baker Mayfield has his limitations compared to Tom Brady as a thrower. So Rachaad White is in for a big season. And in terms of the record, I think it will be the same as the Panthers. I've got them with 7 wins as well. Just pipping the Panthers based on division wins. So that's the season outlook for me in terms of the Buccaneers. Finishing third above the Panthers, but ultimately the same record. And so with the second placed team, I really tossed up between the two, the Falcons and the Saints, and I went with the Saints. I think it'll be another close one in terms of these two teams. Honestly, I wouldn't mind either way, but for the sake of the video, I've got the Saints finishing second. And there's a big reason why they could easily finish first. It's because they've got the easiest, if not one of, the easiest schedules coming up in this NFL season. So they're pretty much primed for a great run. But I think that Atlanta Falcons could just nudge them. But in terms of the Saints, they've really got a solid roster across the board. It's just whether or not people can stay fit as well. Derek Carr coming in. There's a lot of new quarterbacks in this division. Bryce Young being the rookie. Desmond Ridder is only a second-year player. He's the most experienced in terms of in this division. Obviously, Derek Carr has got years on him. And then particularly with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield is a new quarterback as well. So there's a lot going on in the quarterback space in this division. But Derek Carr is a very solid, you know what you're going to get type quarterback with him. And Chris Olave, I think he can facilitate an unbelievable year for that receiver. He's the number one guy there now. Michael Thomas, whether he's back to how much extent, if he can stay fit for more than a few games, who knows? But Chris Olave is the guy there now. So Derek Carr, more than capable of facilitating a monster year for the second-year receiver. And then continuing on with this Saints offense, there's a number of options in that backfield. Obviously, Alvin Kamara gone for 3 weeks due to suspension, so we won't see him for the first 3 games. But Jamal Williams coming in from the Lions. What a season he had. The amount of touchdowns that he had with the Lions topped the NFL, of course. One of the best running backs going around last season. Is now with the Saints. He's a goal line threat, red zone extraordinaire. And he'll be the lead back going into week 1, 2, and 3, I'd say. And then a third one, Kendre Miller, the rookie. They really like him. He's had a bit of a hiccup in terms of, I think, a hamstring. So I don't know if we'll see him week 1 or when we will see him. But Jamal Williams, Alvin Kamara, and Kendre Miller as a 3-headed monster, pretty scary. And then, of course, the Saints defense is just one that you can hang your hat on year after year. Dennis Allen being a defensive coach, and just Sean Payton in the past. They've got a number of pieces that have been around for ages. Demario Davis, of course, Cam Jordan, and then Marshawn Lattimore. These are the sort of players that you can hang your hat on as long as they can stay fit. Marshawn Lattimore in particular. So the defense is really, I think, the pinnacle for this team and their future success potentially. And so regarding the record, I think due to this easy schedule, it'll sort of bloat the winning category. They might not necessarily be one of the better teams going around. compared to others in both the AFC and the NFC, but I think it will be a decent season for the Saints. I've got them with 11 wins. A lot of people have them with more, but I think we've got to sort of temper the expectations due to just how good they really are, how good they can be. And on top of that, I'll give you the record for the Falcons. I think it'll be the same here again. I think 11 wins for the Falcons. It's just that divisional advantage there. But let's talk about the Falcons now in depth. So as I said, I really tossed and turned as to who I would think is going to win this division. And I ultimately settled on the Falcons pretty much because I'm more hyped about them. This offense, and I could be completely just off the ball here because Arthur Smith could ruin me just like he ruined plenty of other people, particularly in fantasy, with the use of Kyle Pitts, Drake London, all that. But ultimately, they don't have Mariota this season. They've got maybe, we don't know, a potentially better, far better quarterback in Desmond Ridder. Who knows? I mean, it's not that hard considering what we were seeing from Mariota last year. But the big one is the addition of Bijan Robinson. You don't take a running back that high in the draft if you're not going to use him just about every second play. Bijan Robinson has that type of talent. We've already seen it in the few plays in the preseason, and obviously, of course, with Texas at college level. So I think Bijan Robinson will just be the pinnacle of the Atlanta Falcons this season. And not to mention Tyler Algier. He went over 1,000 yards last season. He is a more than capable second option there. But it's just as long, you just hope they can use their wide receivers, the tight end, the generational tight end that is Kyle Pitts. He's still got that type of talent. He can't just be not used, taken fourth overall. Drake London being there, big receiver. It has to happen. It has to. On top of that, this is one of the best offensive lines in the league, particularly with the run game. So that's another reason why I think Bijan Robinson will be so good this season. I don't know if underdog is the right word here, but Bijan Robinson, I think, is a relatively sneaky pick for rushing yards this year, particularly because of that O-line, as I mentioned. Then on the flip side, this defense has some really nice pieces, I think. Up front, Grady Jarrett is still there. He's been there for years and years and years. And he just needs more help. So hopefully someone else can step up to his level because he's been great for them. He's been a great servant. Then in the secondary, they've got a number of names that I like. Obviously, AJ Terrell. He's been there. He's the main guy. They picked up Jesse Bates III from the Bengals, the safety, in free agency. I think that's a great get there. Clark Phillips, recently drafted. Could be anything. He was drafted a few rounds later, but there's a lot to like there. They also brought in Jeff Okudah from the Lions, a former high draft pick. So you hope you can get very high play from a high potential player. So I think all in all, the reason why I have the Falcons pipping the Saints just, obviously same record prediction from myself, but the reason why I think they will be the better team is because I think they have more X factor, particularly on that offense, with the new drafted player in Bijan Robinson. But that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think about my predictions and then give me your own for this division. And if you did enjoy this video and want to see more, subscribe to the channel. There'll be plenty more NFL content, of course, with the season beginning right now. And if you did like it, chuck us a like. It means a lot. But that's it from me. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.